Aren't you tired of your favorite shooter franchise keep selling you duds year in and year out? Don't you miss a time when games had more soul? When you knew that your favorite series' new entries were guaranteed to bring in the goods? Well then, you're in the right place. The 2020s may disappoint, but the 2010s were the best time to enjoy your favorite worlds and characters. Surely we'll only get to play treasures for this video. Jesus Christ, who am I kidding? I'm starting with Duke Nukem Forever. This piece of gaming history is mostly known for its legendary development hell. It's not hard to understand when you consider that it started development right after the release of the cult classic Duke Nukem 3D in 1996. So, by its release in 2011, virtually nobody was excited about the game itself. It was a case of everyone going through the motions. 3D Realms and then Gearbox pretended to be excited to release a good game, while the audiences pretended to actually intend to play it. Never goes wrong when this happens. So, okay, let's boot up the game and see what we get.
This is taking forever. Time to stop pissing around and get this big guy back into action.
Oh, this is the first thing you see when you start a new campaign. If this isn't foreshadowing, I don't know what it is. Sure, every YouTuber and their mothers commented the same thing, but there's no way to ignore this. Walking a bit through these locker rooms, you face the Cycloid Emperor, which we already saw defeated in the intro cinematic. I guess it was just a video game. What a lovely oh god. Okay, let's pull a bit back because there's so many things to digest already. First of all, Duke Nukem Forever has a lot of toilet humor. I know, newsflash, what a find! But while Duke 3D seemed to focus on being a parody of 80s action movies, Forever falls into the juvenile humor territory. Quite the statement from someone who can't make a good joke to save his life in his videos, and don't get me wrong, there's an even distribution of moments where I chuckled and cringed. But many of the jokes aged like milk left out in the sun, if the jokes weren't like 10 years old by the time the game released.
You fucking amateur! We're done! We're done professionally, man! You're a nice guy, but you don't get it!
Second, Forever is rather insistent on reminding you that you liked Duke 3D and you have fond memories of it. There are just so many references to it that you're not even sure how much it tries to compensate. I mean, for crying out loud, when you first boot up the game you have an entire cinematic showing you all the cool things you were doing in Duke Nukem 3D. It's like the annoying little brother that keeps telling his friends about his cool older brother that kicks ass and hopes that other kids will think he's cool as well, but of course nobody believes him because why would they? I can partially excuse it from a story perspective because now Duke is an international superstar and humanity's savior for defeating the alien invasion. So yeah, you've got an endless stream of posters, statues and mentions of Duke as a legendary hero. I don't mind these because at least they make sense. But if you constantly try to reference a game, you better be good on your own to avoid giving the impression that you're trying to piggyback on the predecessor's success. You can guess where Forever fell. And thirdly, god, I feel so dirty just typing all of this. As Duke finished his game, our lives are ruined by letting us know that he was actually getting head from the Wholesome twins. If the reference to the Olsen twins wasn't clear enough, they're called Mary and Kate. There are a bunch of sexual references and innuendos throughout the game, to the point where I'm reluctant to show you many important plot points. I'd have to censor everything anyway, and I'm just too lazy to want to edit all the tits, asses and God knows what else. I don't have a strong opinion over the nudity subject overall, but I'll drop this thought before we move on. As some of you might remember, the Olsen twins had a weird following. The "we're gonna make a countdown clock for when they'll be legally adults" kind of weird. No, sorry, just Playboy legal, haha, totally better, not creepy or sleazy anymore. And the thing is that they were only 11 years old when Duke Nukem Forever started its ridiculously long development. I pray to any divinity out there with every single fiber of my being that their addition to the game was a last minute change. They were 25 years old in 2011 at the game's release, so there was plenty of time to do that, but considering they're a noteworthy plot component, are part of the official artwork, and even have a bunch of in-world content dedicated to them, such as a music video featuring them, I'm not feeling super confident. Guess who isn't interested in dwelling on the part where the aliens impregnate and kill them? With those dark thoughts out of the way, Duke loves his life. After saving Earth from the alien invasion, he's essentially a living god among mortals. While on his way to be a guest on a talk show, all hell breaks loose as the aliens attack once again and start kidnapping all the women. Thus, it's up to Duke to do what he knows best. I mean, besides saying corny one-liners and being very forward to any woman who crosses his path, that is, don't worry, the women are much more forward than him, so it's all consensual and not weird at all.
So tiny, what the hell? I know right where I'd stick him.
Jesus Christ, lady, your kid's right next to you, what the One of the very publicly known issues that made the game's development so long was that 3D Realms kept trying to implement more and more features as new shooters were released. And it shows. Duke Nukem Forever's biggest sin is that it's a hodgepodge of every shooter released between 1997 and 2010. It's one thing to look at the industry and adapt every new innovation into your game, and completely another to slap every cool thing you see in other games with no regards to how it will fit in yours. Just take a wild guess to how Duke Nukem Forever approached this. It made sense to have the slow intro in Half-Life since it provided some world building, but having to take a walk through a series of long hallways plastered with Duke Nukem memorabilia, NPCs screaming about how they love him, and countless other things that all scream Duke is king is pointless, especially since all these elements are present right until the end of the game. You can be hours deep into a campaign and still meet NPCs that can't restrain themselves from declaring their undying admiration for Duke. So the slow introduction served no purpose that the rest of the game didn't already. It also seems weird to attempt this kind of storytelling world building technique in a story that's about Duke Nukem in the end. And when Half-Life 2 brought in the physics puzzles, it was meant to show off the Havoc engine as the first major release using it. When Duke Nukem Forever brings physics puzzles 7 years later, it makes you question why they've put something like this in a Duke game. It's not like even the physics itself is good to begin with anyway. Then, because everyone saw that the boat and the buggy segments in Half-Life 2 were the least liked in the community, the devs decided it was a good idea to slap vehicle sections of their own in a Duke game. They come early, but you're not getting away from them too quickly. I might exaggerate, but nearly a fifth of the campaign consists of driving segments. Leave me alone, I just want to shoot stuff! Oops, I forgot to mention that when you're not driving and walking around shooting things, you're forced into unskippable turret sections. Fuck! But by far the most annoying set of features they decided to transplant is the most hated trio of all time: health regeneration, short distance sprinting, and a 2-weapon carry limit. Just saying it makes it sound like an awful idea. How in the ever-loving holy Christ did a Duke game end up with features ripped straight out of Halo and Call of Duty?
Duke, we've got your green power armor over here and ready to go.
Power armor is for pussies.
Oh, but you're not above ripping the health mechanic that was entirely motivated by the power armor. And this one is the least egregious because, as I've said in the past, I think, it's a design choice that allows you to keep moving forward instead of scrounging for supplies, making it for a less fragmented gameplay loop. I still dislike it, but I have the strength of character to see its positives. But you know what goes best with pushing the game forward? Having your character grunting like a dying geriatric patient after running over short distances. The overall game is considerably slower than Duke 3D because modern games hate speed, but this only adds insult to injury. Yeah, it's very lovely to advertise Duke as the absolute peak of the human condition only to have him spit out his lungs after sprinting for a couple of seconds. I mean, he does smoke a metric ton of cigars, but come on, stop trying to find excuses for its crap. It's shit, you're supposed to say it's shit, stick to it. Out of all these three, the weapon carry limit enrages me the most. Duke's supposed to be this over-the-top, larger-than-life figure that kicks asses for a living, always ready to unleash a whole artillery of guns against the alien invaders, and yet he's forced to constantly pick up and throw guns depending on what the level's designed for. As an insult to injury, all guns barely have any ammo in them, so you also have to do the legwork to find more ammo. Very ironic that the time spent on finding medkits was replaced with you scrounging up more ammo for your guns. Great and totally not contradictory design choices, guys. Even the game's designers realize this is a problem because ammo boxes you can infinitely replenish from are peppered throughout all the more important places. If only it wasn't so tricky to increase the ammo count for all weapons. I love overcomplicated solutions that address a self-inflicted problem. Now granted, you can increase the weapon limit to 4 instead of no limit for some reason, but I have no idea when this was introduced. I couldn't find anything online, and all the pre-release stuff I could find only mentioned the 2 weapon limit, which I remember playing with back when I first had my try with Duke Nukem Forever. I suspect it came with the DLC, but I do not know if I'm right. All these flaws will be forgiven because the shooting's great, right? Of course not, it's not terrible, but it's not something to tell your grandkids about either. It's not even boring, it just is. The level design is uninspiring, which is sad when you compare it to Duke 3D's. Honestly, if I wasn't interrupted from shooting to do some inane puzzles or another pointless vehicle segment, it might have been just a meh experience. But these and my issues with its core design make for a very annoying and frustrating experience. It's sad to see. I'm pretty sure this was released simply because of sunk costs reasoning. No one involved in the game's final version was excited to show it to the public, and I'd be astonished if otherwise. Is it the worst game ever made though? Not at all. It's a painfully mediocre shooter that tries to do too many things at the same time, instead of keeping it simple. A bloated, boring game. It wouldn't be fair if I failed to mention the DLC The Doctor Who Cloned Me, which by all accounts is a better Duke Nukem experience, but I'm not tempted by it. Not after the sour taste the original campaign left, which I think is the general consensus. There's also a community mod called Duke Nukem Forever Enhanced with some ambitious goals, but as you guessed by now, I'm not going to try it. Ironically, from a technical standpoint, the only issue I had was with the post-processing effects. In particular, the depth of field does its best to make Duke seem like he needs prescription glasses with how blurry it makes everything look. Unfortunately, this effect is stacked with color filters and ambient occlusion, so if you disable one, you disable all of them. Oh well. Okay, this didn't pan out well. Well, in this case, let's tie some loose ends, shall we? I kept saying I was afraid of looking into this, but after all the talk on Call of Juarez, it would be a shame to leave its ugly duckling out. Of course, we're talking about Call of Juarez the Cartel. God help me. So you guys might ask things like, why the hell are you playing Call of Juarez the Cartel? Or, more importantly, wait a minute, why can't I find it on Steam? Well, you see, initially Call of Juarez series was distributed by Ubisoft, but when their agreement expired, the games were temporarily pulled back from the stores. The only difference is that in Cartel's case, that temporary meant it never returned. Always a good sign. This of course meant that the only way to play it nowadays is to have a totally legit copy of a DVD lying around. Come to Eastern Europe, your game copies are already here. I knew early on that this one would be a gem of a game. What else can you say about a story-heavy Western series that promotes its future sequels with this beautiful photo? Just look at it. No better way to get a good first impression. Naturally, I was confused just like everyone else about the modern settings because who asked for this? For those too curious for their own good, the campaign starts in the best way possible, which is with an on-rails shooting gallery as part of a car chase scene. Fortunately, we've got a long-ass cinematic shortly after that presents the entire setting. Actually, that's an understatement. This entire exposition dump goes hard in showing the first glimpse of an absolutely bonkers premise. Okay, fine, Mexican cartels bombing DA's office? What? Military intervention in Mexico? That's so topical. Hold on, Rudy Giuliani? What are you doing? Vietnam veteran? Fuck off! In short, after the cartels blew a DEA building, this Rudy Giuliani presenting guy ordered the creation of a task force to prevent war against Mexico, I guess. Rudy's top guys are two agents from the DEA and FBI, led by this totally not Ray McCall stand-in from the LAPD. All is served up with dialogue capable of making even the strongest men cringe, with a blatant attempt to portray each character as cool, rebellious, and acting on the edge of the law. Oh boy, this is gonna hurt, isn't it? Now that we've survived this expositional onslaught, we can finally start the campaign properly. It should be noted that, just like Bound in Blood, Cartel also allows you to choose which character to play as. But unlike the previous game, each campaign has significant differences to the story here. Each playable character has their own backstory and motive, and despite working together, they do plenty of things without the knowledge of the others. It goes as far as, even if all questions are answered by the end of the story, you can still find out more by going through the campaign from the point of view of a different character. That's a significant improvement from Bound in Blood, where Ray and Thomas have almost identical stories, and all the great story moments are presented regardless of who you play as. Thus, it would be a massive shame if Cartel was crap and it completely discouraged you from starting a new campaign. Could you imagine that? Okay, let's start with the first level. This is a parallel timeline moment? What's going on? Oh god, you actually go twice through this introductory segment because pressing this button doesn't load the next level. Surely this was an accident? No way, it's a sign of things to come. Calm down. Breathe in, breathe in.
Are you going to be guarding me or hunting Alvarez?
It's all the same thing.
Is it?
Don't worry, honey. You're gonna be fine.
From here on out, our fantastic squad gets involved with covert efforts to dismantle the cartel. You know, stuff like smash the gates, kill hundreds of gangbangers, and burn everything to the ground. I see no reason to talk at length about every level because 1. There are quite a few, and 2. They are boring. Most involve running from cramped alleyway to cramped alleyway, from one arena set piece to the next. It's not even enjoyable to look at, since everything is a shade of brown due to its hyper-aggressive color filter. Okay, the nightclub level is interesting, but that's about it. I would absolutely do a massive disservice to anyone if I didn't quickly shift my focus towards the absolute worst parts of the levels, the driving sections. Except for a couple of levels, every single one has a stupid ass driving segment. The fact that driving feels like shit is the least surprising and egregious part of it. In most cases, these segments are just lengthy shootouts that play out identically. You get in the car, press W, and then watch as some enemy cars blow up while your AI companions randomly shoot in their direction. Oh yeah, you have to drive them because they can't do that, except for that one mission that for some reason has an AI driver, and you can see for yourself how it went. And that's not even mentioning the segments where you can drive from one point to another with nothing happening. There's this level where you must get in the car, follow someone, and exit to start a gunfight. That's it. It's extra amusing since you can fail the driving part by not being close enough to the other car or by cutting corners and exiting the playable area. And remember kids, you have to do shit like this in all but one of the last few levels. Aren't you having fun yet? You'd think you're in for a better time once you exit the car and start shooting. The previous games had solid shooting, so there's no way they can screw that part up. Newsflash, they did. Oh, where do I start with this one? Well, for starters, there's no such thing as recoil on these weapons. Every gun is a laser beam in a way that puts any Call of Duty to shame. The gameplay loop consists of shooting waves of enemies, running a bit and shooting some more. Not interesting at all. And the only good part is that the enemy death animations are nice to see, which might as well insult the whole system. Because I am. The game was designed as a co-op experience. Since there's no way to find players nowadays, you're stuck with AI companions, which are as useless as you'd expect. They sometimes shoot and kill some bad guys, but most of the time they just berate you every time you fire a bullet as if you're the worst shot to ever grace God's green earth. And they yap, and not annoying at all, it never gets old. One cute feature is that each character has so-called hidden agendas, items they must collect while the others are not looking, so they can score some XP points used to unlock some new guns. I imagine that with human-controlled companions it's kind of a cool system, but since each item has a fixed position, I wonder how you could get away with picking them up without your teammates breathing down your neck. With AI companions, it's on the other hand trivial, because most of the time they're scripted to move forward, leaving you alone to do your own thing. It's an underbaked feature meant to support a weapon system that doesn't matter since, as I said, all guns feel the same anyway. Thankfully, your AI companions can never die, so it doesn't matter if they're hopeless when it comes to killing enemies. I don't even want to imagine how the game would have played out if they could have been killed. Their pathfinding is absolutely abysmal, with them constantly getting stuck in terrain and trying to walk through walls randomly. But there's been a kind soul at Techland because the NPCs are programmed to teleport to their destination if they're stuck more than a couple of seconds in the level's geometry. Generally hilarious that this workaround ended up in a released game, but I'm not complaining, I'm taking everything I can at this stage, particularly since to progress through levels, you need all three protagonists hitting triggers to open the following segment. And I'm doubly grateful because, wouldn't you have guessed it, there is a situation where an NPC doesn't benefit from this teleportation magic and renders your progress partially soft-locked. Behold this ghost town level where, for some sick and twisted reason, you have a third NPC following you around. I already hear you say, but how bad can it be? To which I show you this insane path they must traverse in one go. I'm not exaggerating, it took me almost 2 hours of constant reload by suicide to get one instance where this dude manages to pass through this entire crash course without falling into this bottomless pit. Because of course, he absolutely needs to be present in this spot before you can proceed with the rest of the level. Isn't this fun? Do you notice I keep asking this? Wanna take a guess why? This whole game screams unfinished. There are so many glaring issues, even at the fundamental level. I've seen a bunch of missing textures, and the number of enemies that spawned right in front of my eyes speaks volumes. It's gotten to the point where I sometimes feel I'm playing a beta build instead of a final release. That's why it feels almost sad to criticize the game too much, because I'm pretty sure that if Techland had one more year to polish the rough edges, Cartel might have been an enjoyable experience. Instead, we got this. It even crashes when alt-tabbing, for Christ's sake. However, not all of its issues are due to lack of time for development. By far, the single worst aspect of the game is the main cast. Each seems engaged in an overly competitive race to become the king of cringe. Every line they drop sounds like it came out of the mouth of an edgy teenager that's desperate to impress his dweeb friends. The writing tries really damn hard to show you how much on the edge of the law they are, and it feels schlocky as a consequence.
Bare knuckle, motherfucker!
I want the money and I want that lying son of a bitch.
I think you're taking this a little too personally.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Guess you're not a morning person either.
You wanna thank me? How about Thursday? Maybe she wants to thank me too. I helped save her sister's ass.
Cause it's never the white guy who's the bad guy, right?
Give me a fucking break, S.A.
What the hell is wrong with you people?
The main thing you're looking forward to during cutscenes is their end, which is how bad it feels. And that's without talking about the most egregious scene the game makes. Remember when Call of Juarez and its prequel Bound in Blood showed the rise and fall of Ray McCall? How did he go from an increasingly bloodthirsty gunslinger to a grieving man of God who uses pride and self-righteousness to cope with his sense of guilt before finally righting his wrongs and giving his last breath, saving those he cared about and absolving of his past sins? Hope you were touched by his story, because his descendant Ben McCall is a bloodthirsty dick that's only interested in killing and putting fear in anyone who gets in his way. Remember those Bible quotes Ray was saying when blasting divine justice? Cartel has you covered.
And I saw a pale horse, and he who sits upon it, and his name is Death. And he has a bullet with your fucking name on it.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
The other two playable characters are not much better themselves. Eddie Guerra is a corrupt DEA agent who's secretly working with the cartels on the side, while Kim Evans is an FBI agent who's pulling a lot of strings against her teammates to further her own career. Both of them are assholes just as much as Ben, and there's nothing sympathetic about them. Don't get me wrong, you don't need sympathy to enjoy a character, but you absolutely need it if said characters are also uninteresting. The only saving grace is that Ben's story follows roughly the same beats you'd expect from a typical Call of Juarez story. His revenge motivation comes from a long-standing hatred against one of his former Vietnam War friends who now works in the cartel at the center of the game's plot. Because of this, Ben has to balance his intense desire for revenge with his responsibilities as part of the Special Task Force, all while he has to deal with two partners who have their own agendas. Unfortunately, said partners have less exciting backstories or motivations. It's a repeat of Bound in Blood situation, where Ray was the best character to play as. What's worse is that their crap portrayal puts a dent in the game's best feature, which is the incomplete storytelling of each campaign. It's cool playing as Ben and noticing some suspicious stuff about Eddie and Kim, and only at the end of the story to realize that they've done things behind the scenes with substantial implications to the main plot. Hell, the way the entire plot moves forward is good, with more and more side plots twisting, creating more tensions as you advance forward to the end of the story. But all of this is sprinkled with so much cringe writing that only the biggest masochists will be tempted to replay with all three characters. Not even the promise of 4 different endings will sweeten the deal for me, especially since the true ending ends up with Ben magically picking up the Bible at the last moment because we didn't shit enough on Ray McCall's grave, I suppose.
How dare you stand where he stood?
This is an absolute travesty of a sequel, and it's a damn miracle Techland were able to pump out Call of Juarez Gunslinger after this one. I had low hopes for it, but the end product dropped a nuclear bomb of a turd. Holy shit. God damn, I've gone 2 strikes for 2. And worse yet, they're both shitting on beloved franchises. We can't have any more of that. I know, I'll go for the franchise that never failed to deliver. Oh god, it's Alien Colonial Marines, have mercy on my soul. Released as a contractual obligation by Gearbox Software in 2013, Aliens Colonial Marines is the shooter set up roughly 4 months after the events of James Cameron's excellent Aliens movie. Okay, I'm half joking with the obligation part because of the speculation that Gearbox Software took Sega's money for creating this game and funneled it into Borderlands 2. It's just a speculation, Randy Pitchford denounced it, so there's that. But it would be so fucking funny if it was true. Anyway, you're playing as a Colonial Marine that's part of an expedition to unfuck the situation on LV-426. That's the planet where the Aliens movie took place, in case you aren't a nerd enough to immediately associate this random string of letters and numbers with it. Because it's an Aliens game, all plans go to shit in no time because Xenos aren't really polite about things. And because it's an Aliens game, Weyland-Yutani throws a wrench into everything by doing their best to cover it up. In this case, by trying to kill all Colonial Marines. I won't get too much into the details of the story. If I didn't do the courtesy to Duke Nukem Forever, nor to Call of Juarez the Cartel, I won't start doing it now. But for the good part, it's your run-of-the-mill story in this universe, for what it's worth. It's not cringeworthy, it's not aggressively referencing everything the IP has to distract you.
Mom, are you okay? Dad's waiting in the cafeteria.
Okay, Newt, just a second, honey.
Okay, not too much. Overall, it does its job. I like that the Marines are utterly unaware of how to deal with the aliens. In the first 2 levels, you encounter 2 characters who are obviously impregnated by facehuggers and nobody has any idea that they're essentially dead men walking. Oh, did I just do a spoiler? Guess that the 0 viewers who are itching to play this are really disappointed now. Since we're still at the stage where we're saying the nice stuff, the upgrade system is kinda decent. You gain upgrade points by leveling up as you rack up kills and complete challenges. These vary between things such as killing enemies with a specific weapon or in a certain way. It's an acceptable way to push the player towards different playstyles. The upgrades themselves are okay overall. They each bring benefits and downsides, and multiple upgrades can occupy the same slot, so it also means that you have to make a choice as well. There's not much to say about it other than that, since it's a system that works. I mean, it's kinda weird from a lore perspective, since these are Marines stranded on a hostile planet that somehow magically upgrade their arsenal, but I feel kind-hearted today, so I let it slide. Let the poor game have its moment. What I have less nice things to say about is the inventory system. For one, it looks designed for consoles. Do you want to change your weapons or grenade types? Press a button to open a wheel to choose from. Doing this doesn't even pause the game, so in the case of grenades, it's a pain in the ass to select the one you actually want during combat. And good luck changing an empty gun with Xenos around you. As for the weapons, this system paradoxically addresses a problem while creating an equally dumb solution. You see, you still can only carry 2 guns at the same time, which sucks. But you can always change what weapons you carry, so yay! But then, why not just have all the weapons simultaneously? I think this happened because many of the weapons are slight variations of each other, such as the pump action and auto shotguns, or the pulse and battle rifles, which are fighting for the same niches. We ended up with a series of design choices that directly contradict one another. Never heard of a game doing this before? And it's going to be very funny to say this after complaining that Cartel's weapons were lasers, but it's bullshit to have an ADS system where even the first bullet has random inaccuracy this high. You can't take Call of Duty's general design and throw in the monkey wrench like this, but god damn is the shotgun satisfying to use. At least they got this one right. Down to the money. Beautiful. To make matters worse, its interaction with the upgrade system makes it even dumber. For one, if you unlock new weapons as you level up, there's little reason to use them. After all, why would you drop guns you spent so many upgrade points on? Things become even dumber with the unique legendary weapons you can collect because they can't be upgraded at all. The first legendary gun you get is a pump action shotgun with no secondary fire mode and an unknown series of stats. Yeah, for some reason, you get to see detailed weapon stats only in the upgrade menu and not in the weapon wheel where you can actually find all the guns. The silver lining to all these issues is that regardless of what weapons you will use, the game will be generous in resupplying you. So, at least there's no harm in trying them. I stuck with the pulse rifle and the shotgun because they're jack of all trades and strong on their own, but you can experiment at least. But all good things come to an end, because we're jumping into the gameplay. I warned you this moment will come, I fucking warned you. The AI is absolutely crap. Hopelessly so. I'll get this out of the way before I go into further detail. As you might know, a modder discovered that the line responsible for the AI pathing has a typo in one of the configuration text files. A fucking 1-letter typo. Correcting it makes a massive difference, and there's also the Aliens Colonial Marines Overhaul mod with further improvements for those curious about it. But want to know the fun part? The game still sold at 30 euros outside of sales, and this minuscule bug is still present for unaware buyers to deal with. I am starting to think it's no coincidence that Gearbox features twice in this video. If you play the game as it comes right out of the box, or Steam key I guess, you get the big AI performance. The poor enemies move around aimlessly, get stuck on the level's layout, get stuck to each other. It's a big mess. In many cases, the AI just freezes in place, making them easy pickings. I wouldn't go as far as to say you're not under threat, because it's not true. Plenty of times I died because, at least on the third level of difficulty, the enemies pack quite a punch. Xenos can quickly kill you in 2 or 3 hits once they get close, while the human opponents wreck your health with their hit-scan weapons. In the case of aliens, at least the fault lies with me, because ignoring their pathfinding issues, they are very slow compared to what we've seen in AVP. But when we're fighting with Weyland Yutani's troops, it's very frustrating because sometimes you can get killed from full health in the blink of an eye from across the room, while you shoot with inaccurate weapons at sometimes bullet-spongy enemies. The level design is a mixed bag. There are segments where you have gunfights over narrow corridors, forcing you to play as a cover shooter would. In other segments you have branching paths allowing for maneuvering and quite exciting fights. The 3-way fights against aliens and humans are very fun to go through, at least as much as possible with the game's drawbacks. But more often than not, you're fighting waves of Xenos in cramped hallways where you press S and click the left mouse button. I get that part of the horror element is being in confined spaces with such a threat ready to pounce at any moment, but neither AVP game went to such claustrophobic lengths and still managed to nail the feeling of being a poor marine facing such terrible odds. But there's one level in particular that stands out to me in ways I wouldn't even have guessed when I played this. It starts with you freshly escaped from a hive after getting captured at the end of the last level. With no guns and no tools at your disposal, it's the typical let's slow down the pace a bit after a hectic series of levels filled to the brim with combat. After some running away from a very large xenomorph, you meet a new breed of aliens. They are blind and only react to sound, so you have to navigate very slowly in what's by far the highest point of the entire game. I absolutely love this segment, to the point where I don't even care that they struggle to find me when alerted. Whatever. Get the plaudits, you deserve it for how nicely executed this entire segment is. When I said the level stands out, I spoke in the plural, because it manages the feat of coupling a great moment that brings something unique and memorable to the Alien franchise as a whole with this fucking boss fight. Oh god, where do I start? Well, that big alien chasing you can only be killed with a power loader, so it's time to hop in and kick some. No, we're not kicking anything, we're getting kicked now. This boss fight is incredibly broken, holy shit. And the dreadful reality is that it's not even the AI bug doing this, it's just an absolutely garbage design. Basically, you're supposed to repeatedly punch the Raven, because yeah, it has a name apparently, and go through 3 grapple animations to kill it while your AI companions clean up the regular xenomorphs that spawn in the arena. Simple enough in theory, but in practice everything that can go wrong does so in spectacular fashion. The punches you can pull off with the power loader are janky, the camera moves all over the place to a borderline nauseous degree, and the AI companions are, well, usually it doesn't matter that they're not the best shots and often get knocked down, but in this boss fight, if they go down, the rest of the Xenos swarm you and make minced meat out of you because you can only punch one at a time. And you can barely see them anyway, because when they're chomping at your ankles, they're right under your camera since you're focused on tracking Raven. Oh, and also you get stuck in them, so you're often unable to avoid Raven's grappling attacks, losing you a not insignificant amount of health in the process. If you die, it gets even worse because you're not even inside the power loader after the reload, and getting inside involves a long, unskippable animation. During this, you can be damaged by both Xenos and Raven. fucking wonderful. I've had instances where my health dropped to 0 during this animation or while fighting. So, even if you kill the 2 small Xenos right before hopping in, as any guide tells you on the internet, you'll still die a bajillion times because the game decides to shit on you. Fuck this fight. It's so bad that it pushed me to do something that I never done for a video and probably haven't done since childhood. Yep, I downloaded a save file to skip the entire level. Remember kids, it's not cheating if society pushes you in that direction. Unfortunately, this save file also unlocks all the equipment and upgrades, but by this stage it was pretty clear that the only guns I was using were the pulse rifle and the pump action shotgun. Small price to pay to maintain my sanity, I say. And even if the goddamn boss wasn't present, I still would have hated my time with Alien's Colonial Marines. There are only so many instant death scenarios you can go through without snapping. Particularly in the late levels where you fight humans in larger areas, making their surgical hit scan aim an even worse experience to deal with. Did it deserve the hate it got? Oh boy it did. And it's a massive shame because out of all the 3 games I've talked about in this video, this one has the most going for it on paper. While it didn't have a smooth development, it certainly didn't end up as a mashup of design choices randomly taken across 14 years like Duke Nukem Forever did. And while buggy and janky, it's a much more finished product than Call of Juarez the Cartel. But it's by far the most frustrating to play out of the 3. I don't mind challenging games or games that want you dead first and foremost, but dying in the blink of an eye without a reasonable explanation screams lousy design and is definitely not fun to play. And as a closer, ironically Colonial Marines has its own funky technical quirk. Its film grain option looks like trash and it took me only one room to convince me it's way too much to be left checked in the options menu. I didn't plan my video around it, but it's amusing that each game has precisely one technical feature that works totally wrong. So there you have it, my late present for you all. Did I enjoy my time playing them? Fuck no. Am I proud that I pulled it off so late in the year? No. But here it is anyway. There were much better ways I could have spent the end of 2023, that's for damn sure. Regardless, thanks to everyone for watching. It's been a fun year and I hope the next one will be even better. And until next time, cheers!